So it's very exciting to be here with such a great group of people from across the world. There are questions that you can put up in Slido, so I encourage you to now start thinking about them even as we start the panel. It's quite challenging to have all these different nations on the stage and to get a sense of what's going on in every country. And I thought in order for us to understand where Australia's place is in the world, it's probably good to get a sense of what's happening in different countries. But before I do that, I will just introduce some of the panel. So Dimitri Kusnezov is the Undersecretary for Science and Technology Directorate in the US and the Science Advisor to Homeland Security. I read some of the mandates he had. So he's got S&T is responsible for identifying operational gaps, conceptualizing the art of the possible solutions, and delivering operational results that improve the security and resilience of the nation. So that's quite a big job that you have there, Dimitri. But I noticed that you've been working in the Department of Energy, looking at emerging technologies in AI, and I think I've seen that you've got the 10-year grand challenge for 100 teraflops supercomputer, first of a kind in its world, and that's something that happened under your watch, so congratulations on that. You are a physicist by training, so I welcome you to Australia. I'm sorry about the weather.
Thank you.
I'd also like to introduce Roger McKinlay, who's the Challenge Director for the Quantum Technologies UKRI. I had a good chat with you this morning, Roger, so I'm fascinated to share with the audience what's happening in the UK. But basically, you've put about £174 million of funding into 139 projects involving 141 companies since 2018. So that's very impressive, and I think it's going to be interesting for the panel to find out what's going on there. And then Tadashi Sakai, he's in QA from the Tokyo Institute of Technology. You had a career in Toshiba and graduating from Tohoku University in Japan. And from 2019, you've been involved with QLEAP at the Tokyo Institute of Technology. And I read about that. The project aims to theoretically elucidate the quantum advantage in quantum computers with limited functions and performance. So I think that's also very interesting. And obviously, you have a background in semiconductor devices and carbon nanotubes, so welcome to you. And the last but not least is Cathy. I should probably have done you first, Cathy, being a female on the panel. Our ninth chief scientist was the chief scientist of CSRO. Everybody in this audience knows Cathy. I think also knows about your commercialization of LAMTEM, so using quantum sensing to look at valuable deposits underground, and that's been hugely successful. But I think we all know and love you for bringing forward the quantum strategy for the nation and being in government, barracking for us. So with that introduction, I'm now going to start, maybe Cathy with you. I thought it would be good for every one of you to go through and just discuss what you think your nation is doing in the quantum technology space and where you kind of see what are the challenges and the competitive advantage that you face.
Okay, so we were asked to do a little bit of a prepared thing on that, and I know there's a couple of slides there which is just to, maybe if you go to the second one, not the one which is the introduction, but the one with the next slide, which is just a summary of the strategy. So if you go back to the 1980s, Australia, just over the road at UNSW, developed photovoltaic cells which were very efficient thanks to Martin Green, who I'm sure the Vatican's going to make Saint Martin Green soon, because those photovoltaics developed there are the absolute basis for a lot of the energy transition to do with climate change. So that was fantastic. In the 1980s, Australia didn't even dream of the possibility of turning that into an industry. It was seen as something, Australia doesn't do that sort of thing. We do mining, agriculture, education, and tourism. They're our top four. No way would we do that. And so other countries, mostly China, have been manufacturing them, and thank goodness, because they're 97% of all solar panels used around the world are based on that concept. So let's go 40 years further into the now. And Australia was in a situation where, after many, many decades of investing in fundamental quantum research, we got to a point where we had a capability and a technology that could really be something that could have an opportunity for Australia, because with circularity, with climate change, we can't rely on minerals and agriculture for our economy into the future. We need to diversify and really make the most of our great research we have in Australia. And as Australia's chief scientist, it's a real pleasure to actually champion all the research here, because it is such high quality. But how can we actually turn this into something which is an industry? And so it was really fantastic to see the research community across Australia in quantum come together and say, let's coordinate, get CSIRO to do a roadmap, which we did, and then take that to government to say this needs a strategy. So last year you would have seen Minister Husick, the Minister for Industry and Science, launched the Australia's National Quantum Strategy. And this was after extensive stakeholder consultation, and you're all probably sick of me consulting with you on so many different things. But the thing that's really important is that you get good outcomes when you actually talk to people, because all the good ideas come from you, not from me or the government or the public service. And so that's been really important. And with this, we ended up with 5 themes, which are probably, you could say, could be sliced and diced in different ways and look like everybody else's strategies, but I actually think there's a few things that are different. The first one is that we want to have a thriving research and development situation with the right investment and making sure that we create the market for quantum technologies. Then we also need to have the support of the infrastructure, but also the supply chain and materials, which is possibly going to be a growing issue we might want to talk about, because a lot of the materials come from countries which aren't necessarily being our best friends at the moment. The other is, of course, and this is everyone's saying this, is skilled workforce, and this is a strength for Australia. We've got lots of Australian trained people boosting the quantum companies and university sector all around the world, but we need to see how we can retain that capability and make it operate here in a way which will lead to great outcomes. We also need to make sure we have the standards and the frameworks so that it works in our national interests, and also allows interoperability across different countries, because you can all have our different equivalent of VHS and Betamax, and that's not necessarily creating a quantum industry by everybody having the equivalent of, I guess, a Tower of Babel. So that's something that's important. And then the final one was something which I thought was really important because it reflects Australia's national values, and that is that we wanted to make sure that we developed an industry that was trusted, that was ethical, and was inclusive as well. And we might have seen with our welcome to country from Auntie Maxine, is that in bringing in Indigenous Australia even into quantum is going to be something which is going to be important for us as a country. So that's been launched, and then since then there's been a few things happening. We've got programs such as the Australian Centre for Quantum Growth, which Peter just mentioned before, and also there's going to be a Critical Technologies Challenge program launched, and that's the first tranche of investment. At the moment, the government's also going through looking at how can they have an evidence base to say what to do next, rather than having it all set up and then getting it wrong because we didn't quite have all the initiatives focused in the right areas to really support a new industry for Australia. They're taking their time to be able to make sure they invest in the right things, because it's not like we've got bags of money to throw at everything. So we've got to be judicious and clever in the way we do this. And then the other one is also making sure that we build consensus and collaboration across all our states and territories so that we've got a coordinated approach. We're a federation, we've got lots of different quantum activity around the country, and that's something which is truly important, because we need to see how we can bring that all together to really get a multiplier effect. So if you just look at the next slide, you'll see that there's been some element of good stuff happening. We've got startups, there's a whole swag of them there. We've seen $40 million of venture capital being invested in these companies so far, and $150 million of private capital. They're employing about 150 people and growing. And it's something which I have to say, as Australia's Chief Scientist, I'm extraordinarily proud of that. And what we want to see now is how we can encourage people to see that there's the ability, and this is not just in quantum, but looking at all areas, that there's the ability to have more mobility from whether you're a researcher in a university or a public funded agency, that you can start your own business. And if it doesn't work, you can still not go into poverty and unemployment and lose your house, but you actually have safety nets or ways to be able to re-enter wherever you were, or have another pathway. But this idea of mobility, of moving in and out of different opportunities, is something we've got to really work hard on. So how about I leave it there?
That's great, and honestly, it's a pleasure to see all those companies in Australia, and long may they continue to grow. So thank you, Dimitri. If I now go to you, to the US, maybe the same question to you, but US obviously a lot bigger, a lot more funding. A number of companies I imagine wouldn't fit on one slide, but maybe you could give me a sense of the kind of national strategy as you see it.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. Thank you. First, great to be back in Australia, and it's nice to be riffing on quantum a little bit, and we'll see where the conversation goes. Always fun. You know, the quantum strategy, I've been involved in that in various things I've done in Washington over the years, and I've got to tell you, it was probably 10 years ago we were struggling in the interagency to figure out a path forward, and we were watching what was going on in the UK. And I saw Peter Knight wandering around here somewhere, and Peter was part of that, and the EU pushed ahead, and we were trying to struggle to figure out how we resource it, how we make the case, because quantum isn't on everyone's mind. Not everyone has internalized what it means and what it could do, and what's different about it. But we were able in time to get support, and really a major step was with the National Quantum Initiative, which brought in about $1.2 billion in 2018, a 5-year span. It's being reappropriated. It's going through our congressional process right now because the first 5 years is over. But it was based on what came out of the interagency. And at the core, and there's a document, you can find this online, and there are a number of points, but the mental model, it's science first. And so it resources a lot of the science agencies. And that's something I'll want to touch on a little bit today, because there's a piece of operational need that needs to be drawn out more. And the science is fascinating, but there's something else that we also have to do, and that's a place where working together across governments can be important. Anyway, this is just on this slide, there are 6 main points about what the priorities were. And again, you can find this in the document, but science first is the main item there. The next slide. And there are a few more things that brought more texture over the years to understand underneath this science first approach, what else should we be doing? What does it mean? Can we flesh out different roles, different priorities with some granularity? And so sensors has been an important factor. It's something that's probably under-resourced these days. It's something I think about a lot. Quantum networks has been pushed quite a bit in the last few years. We have some of our national labs looking at trying to create quantum internet and instances of that in the US. And you know, the role of the workforce and where the frontiers are going. The workforce is important. We have private sector work on that as well, and that's something we'll also touch on, I think, maybe in the next question or two. But anyway, so we have broadly a number of documents that kind of highlight how we think about it and how agencies are drawn in. And but the main change that happened has been resources, and not just government resources. You know, the private sector has put in a remarkable amount of money in recent years. I think it was $10 billion in 22. Just in venture capital, and I think the quantum computing market alone last year was just about $850 million in 23, and I think it's projected to go up to about $1.5 billion in 26. It's like 22% growth. So, you know, there's money out there. There are things that are being done. It is different than what the world looked like maybe 10, 15 years ago. And it creates a lot of opportunity for partnership and innovation, career paths, and that's something we need to talk about today. So maybe I'll stop there.
Yeah, so look, I'll follow up now, just because I guess one of the things that most Australians would be aware of is there's quite a huge amount of defence funding in the US that supported quantum computing in particular. But you have lots of different agencies, so how do they kind of coordinate with each other? You've got Department of Energy labs, government labs, you've got NSF. Is there a high level of coordination that happens?
There is a coordination, but there isn't a codependence.
Right.
So we understand who's investing in what, but there isn't anything we're developing where it requires both to deliver something to reach some kind of milestone or endpoint. So the coordination is higher level. We'll do this work, you'll do that work. It helps in trying to understand how we match talent and don't duplicate investment at similar universities but I think it works well.
Okay, so Roger, over to you in the UK. I've heard the exciting things happening there this morning, but if you can summarise it in a few minutes, that would be great.
Okay, and it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be here and tell you about our programs. We've 1 year on now almost from publishing a quantum strategy, our UK national quantum strategy, and you'll hear more about that from Sir Peter Knight later in the conference, but let me just give you the basic goals here. And the starting point, world-leading quantum science. Let's be honest, the real driver here is this science and engineering community, because we know the art of the possible. Okay, it's really important to realize that. And the instinct that there is something really important here, and there's some physics to be mastered, and there are businesses to be built, is a really, really important instinct. And that's what we recognize in the UK. You've heard expressions such as science superpower, but recognizing that and feeding that and exploiting that is absolutely essential. And alongside that comes this support for creating the ecosystem where if there are good things happening in the UK, they can grow, and if there are good things happening elsewhere, they can take root, because business is a global business, companies are global. And creating that right ecosystem is something we spent the past 10 years doing. We spent £1 billion over the past 10 years, growing that ecosystem and driving forward the science. We're going to drive societal benefits. That's essential. We're justifying spending taxpayers' money, albeit catalytically. Quantum is not going to be built on government money. There's already huge influx, I think around $60 billion US dollars into quantum on the computing side alone. But delivering those benefits is essential, and we're recognizing those in some joined up government thinking we call missions, which I'll touch on. And finally, creating this regulatory framework, which kind of makes my hair stand on end, because having worked in industry for 40 years, regulation, everyone lives with it, but do you really want to be talking about it now? The missing word there is appropriate regulation, okay? And that means not too much, but recognizing where regulation is going to be important. And businesses like that, because regulations grow business. They don't just restrict business. So those are the goals. We've said $2.5 billion over 10 years has been announced. 100 million of that is onto research hubs. We've had 4 research hubs running for the past 10 years. We're in the process of picking some new research hubs. There may be 4, there may be more, there may be less. We'll know when we've picked that number that everyone else is copying us, because everyone's got 4 research hubs now. So if we pick 6 and everyone else picks 6, you're still copying us, okay? And then these missions, big ideas on what quantum computing can do for society, what quantum sensors can do for healthcare, what quantum networks can do for security and communication and distributed computing. So we're beginning to focus on those. Skills is essential, big skills, centers for doctoral training, creating PhDs, fellowships, keeping that academic community alive, but also wider skills. Global partnerships are essential. They tend to become really important when you're dealing with sensitive stuff. The capabilities of quantum make it sensitive, and it needs well-structured. I'm sure we're going to hear more of AUKUS over the next few days, but it needs well-structured global cooperation between governments and industry. And government as a procurer. We're showing success now in the UK of government departments. If it has got big societal benefits, government should want to buy quantum technologies. We've started that in the UK, and we're seeing the benefits into businesses, of course. It means they're seeing revenue, not just grant funding. We're focusing on some specific areas of technology which we think we haven't really seen blossom yet in the past 10 years. I'd pick out networks as one of those. And then infrastructure, which I think, having seen some universities in the past 2 days here in Australia, I think you do fantastically. I've never seen such clean labs, with a lot of work going on in them as well, of course. So on to the next slide. Let's just touch on what the industrial landscape looks like. We have, over the past 10 years, been funding industry. If you want a quantum industry, fund industry. Don't fund national labs or universities and expect it to percolate down. It doesn't percolate, okay? I think someone's described to me the US national labs being institutions where even light doesn't manage to escape, okay? So we fund companies. We fund companies to form collaborations of industry. 260 million grants have now gone out. We've got 330 million of project activity because there is an industry contribution. About 200 companies, as many projects running, and about 100 of those are still live. We've been doing this for about 7 years now. And those companies have raised over 500 million of private investment. So we know that we're not alone in thinking it's a good thing and making those things happen. And who are those companies? Well, we haven't got any tech giants in the UK. We've got several computing hardware companies who are doing great things. We've got a very strong company in River Lane with quantum error collection and algorithms. We've got a lot of people in the supply chain in terms of components of photonics. I'd pull out photonics as being essential. No matter what your qubits are, it's going to take light to wire up the quantum computers of the future. And we've got great British companies like Toshiba in the picture there. Yeah. I mean, there used to be a joke that the Germans made the best luxury cars in Europe, the French made the best family cars, and the Brits made the best Japanese cars, all right? That is the way industry works. And that's Toshiba celebrating 30 years in the UK and 20 million investment in a new building, which is their global quantum centre of excellence. But we're seeing not only homegrown companies, big companies, existing companies adopt quantum, the financial institutions, banks such as Standard Chartered, but other companies coming to the UK because of the ecosystem we've created. A little company you won't heard of, we're funding at the moment, called Q Control. They're so good, I think they ought to open in Australia. All right, they're excellent. So this is this vibrant industry scene we've created, and we're really looking forward to seeing that grow further and that 500 million figure, which is pretty conservative, spooling up over the next few years.
Thank you. Well, okay, so Tadashi.
Yeah.
So tell me about what's going on in Japan.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me. Such kind of a very nice conference. I'm very surprised to look at very many students this morning. This kind of fair is not existing in Japan, so it's very interesting. First of all, this is the Japan National Quantum Technology Strategy. First, in 2020, first quantum technology and innovation strategy is established in Japan with roadmap, but year and year, the situation is changed, so every year the strategy revised. In 2022, a vision of quantum future society is established, and next, artist strategy of quantum future industry development established in April 2023. In this document, we have 3 major goals. That is 10 million users for quantum technology in Japan, and 50 trillion in production value for quantum technology in Japan. Also, create quantum unicorn venture companies that pioneer future markets. And to support these strategies, there are so many of politics are now going on. One is the Academia Quantum Technology Networks that we call the Quantum Innovation Hubs, QIH I call, was formed by 11 university and national research institutes. And as for the industry side, Quantum Consortium was formed. That is a Quantum Strategic Industry Alliance for Evolution, Q-Star we call. That is formed by the 89 industries. And we also have the very many of quantum government-funded quantum technology projects such as Presto, Moonshot, COI, SIP, and most earliest and main flagship project next QLEAP. That is started at 2018 and last 10 years. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. This is the one of the big flagship projects for in the QLEAP program, especially for the quantum metrology and sensing. I engaged to this project. This is mainly led by Professor Mutsuko Hatano in Tokyo Tech, and many of research institutes and university, also companies are included, such as Tokyo University and QST and the NIMS and so on. And one big thing is the most strong companies are included to this project. One is Sumitomo Electric, that is famous for the #1 market leader for the single crystal diamond for industries, and another is Shinyetsu Chemical, that is #1 silicon wafer manufacturer in the world. They both want to commercialize the diamond materials for the NV-based technologies. That is very promising for in Japan. And another is Hitachi and Yazaki. Hitachi is also very famous for the various electric, and they want to apply the NV sensor for the single cell measurement in pH or temperature or something. And Yazaki is a big car component maker. They are collaborating with Toyota and some other companies, and now developing current and temperature sensors for the electric vehicle battery management. That kind of companies are very strong and are now very active in the field of quantum technology in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think having met with you all and discussed this before, what's amazing for me is every country has a slightly different approach. I mean, the mix of things is the same in every country. You need talent, you need industry. We'll come back to Japan, but Japan's interesting because it has big industry, and I know you said there are challenges there. But I think for the audience, given that every country has a slightly different flavor and balance of companies and research and government labs, how do countries work together? And I wanted to get a sense of, do you have examples that you've seen where nations have worked well together? And I don't know, Dimitri, might start with you with that.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different ways countries can work together. You know, multinational companies have an easier place. They have footprints. You know, the recent partnership announced by University of Tokyo, University of Chicago, and IBM, for example, is a place where a company that has research arms in these countries can partner with academic institutions and try and push both the technology development and the innovation across borders. And so they're kind of natural mechanisms because these entities already are multinational. You know, from the government point of view, I don't have too many issues myself in the sense that within DHS, I do have unique authorities to do that directly with countries. So it was written in law, and so with bilaterals, for example, with Australia and other countries we can exchange people, money, equipment, all within our authority to simply do it. And so existing international agreements between us allow us to then work with partner entities within a country. You know, yesterday I was down in Adelaide talking with one of these companies that's doing carbon nanotube technologies for for scanners and things like that, which you know, may at some point revolutionize how we pass through airports and do other things. But it's easy for us to directly resource the research here because we have that reach. So, you know, there isn't a one-size-fits-all. Different agencies have different authorities, but there are mechanisms if you find the right kind of partnership to execute these things.
So I guess one of the questions people might ask is the US is so big, doesn't it have everything in country? Why would it be looking to partner outside of the US? Maybe you could give a view on that.
Well, the innovation is frankly everywhere. You know, I like quantum mechanics personally for it's because it's simple. You know, conceptually simple because look, there are a handful of rules. This is the universe that it lives in. Okay, you say, okay, I understand. And here's the one equation that describes anything that could happen there. And that's been tested for about 100 years now, and it's still the government. And that's it. Everything else comes from that. And so it's simple to define. You write the equation on one line. It's a few characters. And from that came fission and fusion and lasers and atomic clocks and MRI machines and a cadence of technologies, PN junctions and transistors. And, you know, throughout the years there's been this cadence of things, but it was rooted in laboratories that had to have infrastructure and deep research. And now you find with the world it's different. You have a big corporate footprint, a lot of venture, a lot of people placing bets around the world, and the ideas are not located in just one place. And they're everywhere, and trying to find the right ways to pull what you need into your operational world requires you looking broadly. There are things that are certainly happening in the US, but there are exciting things happening in Japan, in Australia, in the UK, in other parts of the world. And when you look at that, you know, you say, well, how can we partner to do something that would be of mutual benefit to both of us? And so,
I think on the stage here we've got the 4 nations from the Quad, and I know Cathy, you've been working on this, but maybe you could talk a little bit about what the Quad does together. What kind of programs do they have for collaboration?
Sure. So the Quad is a quadrilateral arrangement between India, Japan, US and Australia, and there's been the development of a Quad investment network which has come out of the White House in the US. And with that, we've set up a centre of excellence for quantum industries and looking at how we can create the connections between the different countries to optimise or make the most of the different countries' best things to have on offer. And it's really interesting. We're going through looking at, first of all, doing some groundwork to say what's the situation in Japan's responsible for doing some reports on where we can engage on quantum computers. India is looking at communications, US on sensors, and I'm responsible for the ecosystem. And so we're just looking at the moment from the bit which I'm looking at is what's the workforce look like? What is it need? What are the new business models that are needed? What are the support, supply chain and so on? Because when you have those countries potentially coming together, particularly in the Asia-Pacific, Indo-Pacific area, it just gives you a little bit of, I guess, ability to coordinate so that you can't do everything. I think one of the things you've got to remember is that no one country is going to have the ability to do everything in quantum. It's going to be something that's pervasive that, you know, in 20 years' time, just like none of us can live without a mobile phone these days, we'll probably find that quantum will be influencing our world in a way where it'll be just part of our everyday. So no one country will be in a position to not have the capabilities that will be needed in a modern society. So that means you've got to partner and capitalise on it. We're a small country, 0.3% of the world's population. We do 4% of the world's research. If we were thinking we could do it all on our own, we're making a big mistake because there's no way we can. And it's these sorts of arrangements that are important. And something like the AUKUS agreement, which is somewhat different. It's of course just starts with a defence arrangement, but where it's heading to, and even though everyone's had a bit of a whinge about the uptick in export controls and the issues that go with that, that's going to open up extraordinary opportunities, particularly for a small country like Australia, because that will mean that it'll be as though the UK and the US will become part of our almost domestic market, because there won't be any supply chain issues or any export control issues. That for us is extraordinary. So the opportunities of collaborating, of seeing how we can stitch these up to have clear supply chains and roles and responsibilities, and also not just trying to nick each other's capability in skills. We actually think very differently in the way we approach a quantum industry. So it's not just Australia's quantum industries, US, Japan's, UK's, but we actually start seeing it as something where there's extraordinary benefits, not just for people to create a business, build something and make money, but it's actually for benefits in solving major issues. You know, can we actually design a better battery? Can we deal with medicine in a way so we can have truly unique personalised medicine to make sure people don't get sick or die from cancer and so on. There's so many opportunities that will make humanity better, that doing it jointly in a way which is rethinking, I think stepping up away from this is the Australian way, but using these arrangements of Quad and AUKUS, I think can lift us above our sort of singular country approach and realise that we can have some terrific things come from that by that coordination. And one of the things I've noticed while I've been in this role as Australia's Chief Scientist has been the power of conversation and discussion, and having the high-level relationships does a lot more for delivery by having that almost like imprimatur and setting up joint programs or making sure things link up, rather than just relying on what we have mostly to date has been the bottom-up sort of things where they're very good, but they're not as efficient and effective, and they only really serve those who are collaborating. So I think these different arrangements have got a long way to go. I'm not going to pretend we've landed it yet, but I think the opportunity is extraordinary, and one where we have to use our imaginations to do different and approach things in a different way.
Okay. And Roger, I'm going to go to you after that, because you're obviously here as part of the UK delegation, and you've been talking about AUKUS as well. How do you see collaborations across the US and Australia?
I think the most important thing is not to start with a sentence that says what governments must do is X, because what I described earlier is a broad industrial capability. So to some extent, and we've had a broad program in the UK where the UK MOD has been part of our national program. If I've done my job right, I've created an industrial capability. Governments need technical capabilities, and they have to be built on an industrial capability, and industrial capabilities are by and large global. So if I gave examples of companies who are investing in the UK, if you're a company investing in a country, you don't want to develop products in one country and find you cannot move them to another one, or even bring them back home if it's foreign direct investment, okay? So you need that broad foundation of good industrial collaboration. Just recognize it's the way the world works, okay? So I think we built up good capabilities in the UK. Quantum computing is going to be important, quantum information systems, position navigation and timing, GNSS independent position navigation and timing for military applications is going to be important. If I've done my job right, then I think in these discussions which are unfolding on AUKUS Pillar 2, for example, then there'll be opportunities to turn that into technical capability with certain collaboration, and global companies are going to feature in that. And as long as, and you've said it already, as long as you can move people and ideas and products and money around, you'll be able to feed that engine which enables you to extract the technical capabilities you want. If you tinker too much of that or restrict it too much, you won't get the capability coming up. You know, you've got to recognize that it's big industrial capability. We're used to it with smartphones, we're used to it to global products. Those, you've got to keep a certain amount of freedom at that level to be able to feed the technical capability, but there are sensitive issues within quantum. And so there are, you know, it is not a totally unrestricted story, and getting that balance right is going to be absolutely key if this international collaboration is going to actually yield new capabilities in terms of technical capabilities and what they mean for defense and what they mean for security.
I think one of the interesting aspects, what's happening in Japan, is with these young you know, scientists coming through and the competition with the industry in Japan. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. What I want to say here is the competition in between the technology field. That is, of course, quantum is very important, but not only quantum technology, but also some other technology field is recently investigated, such as semiconductor industry is very strong right now. Every year, 2 decades larger investment now going on compared to the quantum technologies. That is a very big thing. Because of that, the young students now seeking the jobs, not only for the quantum, but for the semiconductor industry is very attractive right now. It is some kind of very big competition. But I think as for the physicists and the scientists student, I think it's quantum technology field is much more attractive, I suppose, because the semiconductor technology industries are well established and more organized, and so divided to the many of jobs. But compared to that, young students, if we get start to enter the quantum technology division or company, they can lead the company, because the industry, semiconductor field, many of senior researchers and so engineers are already in the company and field. But here,
So are you saying that they prefer to go to the quantum industry, or they do?
yeah,
They do. Okay, interesting. Okay.
that is the one.
Okay. So the semiconductor's getting more funding, but there's still the young people wanting to do startups.
Now, yes, they are thinking.
They're thinking about it. Interesting.
Thinking.
I think that's a big change. So back to the US. What's the biggest challenge in the US about getting these researchers and companies to be productive and get profit? What do you think is the big challenge for the US globally in the quantum fields?
Being profitable? I don't know if I'm especially skilled to help answer some of these as a scientist, but part of it is it's first uneven across quantum, and the places I worry about that I think need more government help are sensor technologies. I think the science side of things with the NISC systems is doing well, because you can do interesting things on these kinds of platforms. There are people making them, they're testing them, the science is interesting and you can test. But it's harder in sensors because it depends on the use cases you want. And what are the environments that you're going to need to do it in. And there are a lot of places I really want more development in exquisite sensors, because it's kind of a frontier that we haven't seen where the walls of performance are. It's just kind of open, and it's limited by people trying different things and innovating, but you have to steer them in the direction. And because the markets can be niche markets, you need the government there for some of these that could have uses for us, helping pull that along. Because I don't think the market cap in some of those sensors is going to be especially big to compel that much venture as we've seen. And so that's where governments also working together can help.
Finding the use cases.
Yeah, develop some use cases, kind of create the ecosystem that then hopefully leads to derivative products and things that find broader footprint. But there are things that I worry about that if we don't nurse along and help, that we're going to have a hard time developing. And it's a good time to do it now, while there's so many companies and startups thinking about trying to innovate here. This is really the right time.
And so Roger, with the UK, you've got all these companies starting. Do you see that the use cases are there for them? Is it obvious for each of the, whether it's sensing or communications or computing? Do you see that there's industry pull in the UK?
Oh, I think there's very strong industry pull. A good example on quantum would be quantum computing. I would caution governments about thinking that what they spend on quantum computing is going to have any effect whatsoever. You know, there are billions of private money coming in. The job of governments there is to stay engaged so that they can influence the development for their own applications and they can understand the technology for appropriate regulation. Now, turn it round, if you're a sensor company at the moment, the market pull for navigation systems in the past 40 years has been tiny because GPS does absolutely everything. All right? It's killed the market. It's what we call a market failure. But if you're in the business of wanting to navigate where there is no GPS or GNSS, or it has been denied, you're going to have to artificially help people see a market in that, and that's where government intervention is absolutely essential. And we're seeing that on some of the quantum sensor side. So I'd always, I'd look to see the way the world is going, you know, from natural commercial forces, and then be realistic about what kind of government intervention is needed. And it can be expensive. And of course, if you're finally looking at a relatively small market of very high performance, you're going to have to help companies see where the business case is in that. Now, that's the great thing when you talk about collaboration, because in very simple terms, you're making that market bigger. You know, and that's going to help that business case, and it's going to help the efficiency and the profitability of those companies.
So Cathy, back to you. Where do you see, you know, what are the challenges and the barriers in Australia, both to collaboration and to make the industry bigger here?
Well, the first one, of course, is making sure that we're able to attract the investment, so that that patient capital into businesses, I think, is really important. And that's not been a real strength in Australia in past years, but we're seeing that grow. And I know that you would have seen the National Reconstruction Fund that the government set up, which is sort of like a government venture capital, I guess, to really support that and make things happen. And $1 billion of that is earmarked for critical technology. So that's a really positive thing. Probably another thing is we've got to make sure that we are creating the demand in Australia so that businesses know that there's an opportunity that quantum might help them solve some of their issues. And we've been starting a program of quantum meets, so we've had 2 so far, and it's been really interesting. We had the first one last year in August called Quantum Meets Sport, and that came about because a guy Queensland University of Technology wrote a paper which was about where quantum could be useful in sport. Australia's a sporting nation, so we thought with the Australian Institute of Sport, got Kieran Perkins on site to support us on doing this, and we had a really good workshop which was supported by the ARC Centre for Quantum Biotechnology, and Warwick Bowen was really helping in CSIRO. And from that, we got sports people together, their trainers, their medical doctors, quantum industries, and some of the researchers. And it was 70 people. They fronted up, had soggy sandwiches, and shared their problem sets. And it was pretty extraordinary what came from that. So we realised that logistics is huge, brain injury is huge. We would have loved to know if Sam Kerr could have prevented her calf injury by predicting it by having measurements of muscles. So those sorts of things were brought out and then teams self-formed to work with different businesses. We also had this great idea. We've got the Olympic Games coming up. Let's pitch it to the Olympic Games Committee, and we, including making a mascot. So we've got the Australian quantum mascot, Q-Bit, and I should have brought a picture of it, but anyway, another time. And we pitched that, and it's the fastest experience. That was on the, I think it was 2 months later, Queensland Government announced $5 million to bring quantum into the Olympic Games. So it really has influenced people when they can see the opportunity. We had one last week on Quantum Meets Resources, and we had Rio Tinto and BHP and a whole range of, and also the contractors in mineral exploration, and also in the oil industry. We had the the CEO of the what is it, Minerals Council of Australia. So we had top brass there, and came up again with a whole range of different problem sets. And we'll write that up and share them. But what we're already seeing is groups coming together and creating ideas for quantum technologies that will solve their business problems. So we're going to work our way through from health, biotech, energy, finance, and so on throughout the year, and really just bring those cohorts together. They're amazing meetings just in a day, and so all of you are most welcome to come. I'm not sure we can accommodate all of you at one time, but I don't. But the thing is that it's bringing that just different group together and saying, we're not holding your hand after this, go forth and do stuff, but sharing that information and understanding, particularly since a lot of people have heard about quantum and think it's something in the future and the never never, and it's something which has nothing to do with me. Being able to show real examples of where it's available now, well, it's not that far away, and I don't know if you're getting that experience, but just reading the breakthroughs on a daily basis that are happening around the world, the acceleration in development of quantum technologies is mind-blowingly amazing. I think the mixture of investment, super smart people, and a real ambition is really proving to say, unless the laws of physics are stopping us, nothing will.
So now I have a whole series of questions that I didn't realise are coming through, so I'm going to try and march through a few of them. One of them is for Roger, and it's about Brexit. So what challenges has Brexit posed for the UK's quantum strategy, and has it made collaboration with European researchers more challenging?
There's a very specific aspect to Brexit, which has been the Horizon programme for collaboration of research in the UK, and we continue to chip away at that and try and reach an agreement. But there's an illustration there of the fact that quantum has been branded a sensitive technology. So even as we make progress on broader aspects of collaboration within Horizon in this new regime, then quantum is still a very problematic area. So that's a really specific example. Otherwise, I think generally in the style of this whole discussion, of course, reaching an agreement on something is not a given. Okay, anyone who's negotiated, be it on collaboration or anything else, knows that. So it's hard work, and I would think generally, post-Brexit has shown that reaching agreement, new trade agreements and collaboration like this, that's life. But it is hard work, and it's why opportunities like this and opportunities like AUKUS are just so important, because no country can survive without trade agreements and agreements to collaborate on technology and security agreements and so on. And I think Brexit is a reminder that to the UK that, it's hard work, and if you do something like Brexit, you better find a few more people who know how to do the negotiations, because you've given yourself a pile of work to do. And that's been demonstrated.
So the next question I'm going to open to all of you, and it's an interesting one. It's from a mathematician in the audience. It says the National Quantum Strategy doesn't mention mathematics. Why is it? Is it because there's an emphasis on technology?
What does it mention, sorry?
Mathematics.
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 Doesn't mention mathematics. So maybe this is for you, Cathy, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nalini Joshi, who asked that question. Look, we're not perfect, and we obviously didn't talk to enough mathematicians, but look, I think the whole realisation of the fundamental requirement of mathematics in so many parts of what we do is probably something we're not bringing up enough. And the whole idea of the quantum strategy is not something you put on the shelf to gather dust, but to be the starting point. So point taken, and let's do better, I think, is what I'm going to have to say, and keep nobbling me. So yes.
So there's a lot of interesting questions. This one is I think it's quite pertinent. But they're asking specifically, and I think it might be difficult to answer, but how specifically has AUKUS facilitated collaboration between countries?
I'm sorry.
Has AUKUS facilitated collaboration between countries?
Well, for us at Homeland, it's been a little bit peripheral. The main channel is through Department of Defense. But I think there are channels there that allow broader consideration, and we're looking at that. So it is an enabler of conversations, but again, it has been largely focused on the defense link between the partner countries, with some things on the side. And so, you know, for me, the question is, what's the better value? Trying to go through someone else's agreement to try and use that, or use the tools we already have in hand that I think could achieve similar types of goals in opening kind of approaches to solving the problems we want. So, you know, we use all the instruments at our disposal. It's available, but I haven't seen it as a key enabler that we couldn't do in other ways at the moment.
I suspect, I don't know, Cathy or Roger, do you want to say anything? But it could be for Emily to answer in the next session, yeah?
Look, I think Pillar 2, which is the non-defence aspects, is still emerging, so that's the first thing. Yeah. Look, last Friday I had a conversation with the US ambassador in Australia, Carolyn Kennedy, and we were looking at the potential for there's a strong link when our President of the US and the Australian Prime Minister met last, I think it was September, October, and critical minerals was identified. One of the things which was stunning, which we learned at the resources meeting, is that we have to discover something like 60 more nickel mines, 30 more lithium mines, and so on to deliver the energy transition globally. And the success rate of finding a mine is 1 in 1,000. So quantum sensors for finding minerals is something which is of interest to, from an AUKUS perspective, or a joint opportunity there. But the other is also, those of us who've worked in mineral exploration for many years know that when you don't have mineral exploration money, you usually get defence money, because finding a mineral deposit isn't too difficult, too much different from finding, you know, sort of little battle spaces or submarines or things underwater. And so, there's commonality there in sensor technologies. And so we were thinking, well, what can we do next to try and see how we can use this recognition of something which is urgent, that's a great opportunity, and how can we sort of bring the sort of countries together to get the right people. First of all, we thought we'd just start off with some sort of webinar type workshop to just see interested parties to get the conversation going. And that's a, you know, positive from COVID. We can now start things off by just having a phone call across countries at just unfortunate times of the day, but that's the sort of starting point, and then get some momentum going and look at what the possibility is, and then see how we can progress that.
I mean, I definitely think with COVID, every nation became aware of supply chain, and possibly, you know, the talent, the number of people that are trained in different areas within their own countries. And I think that's a no-brainer for the different nations to be collaborating together going forwards. So maybe just in Japan, supply chain issues, how do you see Japan collaborating with other nations on that?
That's very important, I think, because in Japan, quantum technology, so physicist is a very small number of people we can get. So from other countries, especially the physicists, quantum technology physicists is very welcome to join us, because the other field engineers, senior engineers, many of engineers we have from the car manufacturer and also semiconductor companies, but the young, quantum native-like physicists and scientists may be important. So that's kind of some kind of relationship and partnership may be important. And in Japan, recently we have some kind of add-on funding we call Aspire funding we have. That is the partnership money that we can add on the existing project, national project, such as if we are now doing a QD project, we can get another add-on project to make a partnership with, of course, Australia or something, other country. And if we apply that, partnership company universities people so make some conference, a workshop or something, and stay as countries for 1 year or 2 years or something. That kind of things, so to encourage partnership, good way in Japan.
Okay. So Roger, I'm going to leave you with the last word, just because I'm looking at you right now. So one thing that you would love to happen to get collaboration between nations?
To get collaboration between nations?
Between nations. If you could do anything, if you had complete control, power of the world, in the quantum technology space, what would you do?
I would say we need, I mean, the supply chain is a good issue. You know, I used to have a dreadfully unreliable car. I wish I'd been rich enough to have a second car to use just in case the first one fails. Right? It doesn't work like that, okay? It doesn't work like that. The devil is in the detail. The world can't afford duplication of supply chains. It's for commercial energy. So what I'd really like to see is, I think, there's a better understanding of, and it means, to be honest, listening to companies and companies having a higher profile, I think. We're all dependent on private investment in technology capability. It's going to be true in quantum as well. And I think it's getting, and I think this is where regulation and standards are going to play a role. We really need to see a thriving commercial scene, an industrial scene in quantum, and then we will have the right tools to be able to play with this difficult international collaboration we need.
Well, on that positive note, I'd like to thank you all. I think we're on time. I'm getting the red flashing lights. So thank you all from the panel for your thoughts today.